this is what you hear instead.
There was a sluggish inclination of the toad-like head, and the eyes opened a little wider, and light flowed from them in viscous tricklings on the creased underlids. Then Ralabavoo seemed to hear a deep, rumbling sound, that he knew not whether it reverberated in the dusky air or in his own mind. And the sounds shaped themselves, albeit uncouthly, into syllables and words.
Thanks are due to Tsathoggua for his offering. But since I have fed lately on a well-bloodied sacrifice, my hunger is appeased for the present, and I require not the offering. However, it may be that others of the old ones are athirst or famished. And since you came here with a gish on you, it is not fitting that you should not go hence without another. So I place you under this gish, to betake yourself downward through the caverns till you reach, after long descent, that bottomless gulf over which the spider god Atlat-Nacha weaves his eternal webs. And there, calling to Atlat-Nacha, you must say, I am the gift sent by Tsathoggua. Pokemon, yeah, a heart so true. You courage and pull us too. You teach me and I'll teach you. Then we'll talk about Tsathoggua. Pokemon.
Pokemon. People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos at PGTTCM on the Twitter. Find us on Facebook. You can track us down on the internet at pgttcm.podbean.com. That's where you'll find links to everything, show notes, store stuff. Check out the store. Hey, when you're buying stuff, Equus Cigarettes, cigarettes for horses, finest Pomeranian tobacco. Show's new sponsor. Thank you so much.
Ooh. Guess who we're talking about today? Tsathoggua, which doesn't really make sense why I'm doing ghost voice noises. Tsathoggua. Let's see. Great-grandson of Azathoth? Great-great-grandson? Let's see. Second cousin once removed from Cthulhu. The sleeper of Nakai. Inhabitant of Saturn. I believe that's where Tsathoggua came from originally. Or something like that. First appearing in some story by Clark Ashton Smith. But first in print by H.P. Lovecraft for a story that he liked by Clark Ashton Smith.
That's not true.
First appearing in Lovecraft's Whisper in Darkness. Although first created by Clark Ashton Smith, as I said a moment ago. Lovecraft loved the story that Smith had created, loved the idea, loved the furry beast so much he felt inclined to add it to a story of his. The way luck goes, the way things happen, Lovecraft's story was published first. which is kind of rare for Lovecraft to get something out before Clark Ashton Smith, considering the fact that Lovecraft had such a hard time getting anything published, and Smith was respected. The story was called The Tale of Zeros, written in 1929 and finally published in November 1931 issue of Weird Tales magazine. Tsathoggua is known by many names, which are pretty much just respellings of Tsathoggua phonetically, and maybe different emphasis on different syllables. The very first description of Tsathoggua ever comes from the Clark Ashton Smith tale I spoke of a moment ago, the tale of Zeros.
He was very squat and pot-bellied. His head was more like a monstrous toad than a deity, and his whole body was covered with an imitation of short fur, somehow giving a vague sensation of both bat and the sloth. His sleepy lids were half lowered over his globule eyes, and the tip of his queer tongue issued from his fat mouth.
So many episodes we've had so far have had bits and pieces to do with Tsathoggua, bits and pieces to do with this. We've talked about Azathoth, who is his great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather. We've talked about Clark Ashton Smith. We've actually talked about this story in particular in, I think, the first episode. We went through this when we discussed Atlatinacha as well, and the Aboth, the source of uncleanness. I am not an expert in Tsathoggua.
Clark Ashton Smith was an expert in Tsathoggua, and he wrote about it. I have filled out the style sheet with such annotations and details concerning Tsathoggua as I am present able to furnish. Some of these have required considerable delving into the parchments of Nam, who was the chief genealogist as well as a noted prophet. And I am well aware that certain of my phonetic renderings from the Elder Script are debatable. You raised some interesting points with your questions. Azathoth, the primal nuclear chaos, reproduced, of course, only by fission. But its progeny, entering various other planets, often took on attributes of androgenism or bisexuality. The androgenes, curiously, required no conjunctuality in the production of offspring, but their children were commonly unisexual, male or female. Hiziqual Mazha, uncle of Tsathoggua, and Gizgaths, Tsathogua's father, were the male progeny of Xaskluth, the androgynous spawn of Azathoth. Thus, you will note a trend towards biological complexity. It is worthy of record, however, that Nathan Zayam, the half-breed Vormi, reverted to the most primitive Azathothian characteristics following the stress of his numerous decapitations. I have yet to translate the terrible and abominable legend telling how a certain doughty citizen of Conorium, not Athamius, returned to the city after its public execution and found that it was peopled most execrably and numerously by visual spawn of Kingithan Zarum. which possessed no vestige of anything human or even earthly. HPL, I am sure, can furnish much fuller data concerning the genesis of Cthulhu that I am unable to offer. It would seem, for rather oblique references of Nam, that Tulu was a cousin of Hekwal Mahna, but was somewhat closer to the Azathothean archetype than previous mentioned deity. That latter god, I learned together with Gisguth, was born of Kisnathcluth in a far system. Kisnathcluth came in family, already included Gisguth's wife, Zitzi Hemangi, and the infant Tsathoggua, to Yoggoth, where I may add, Kisnathcluth was most mercifully continued to sojourn through the eons. Hezuqual Mahalna, who found its parents slightly uncongenial owing to its cannibalistic habits, immigrated to Yashk, known to us as Neptune. At an early age, but wary of the particular religious devotations of the Yakshians, went on to Kai Kranosh, in which preceded by several aeons his nephew Tsathoggua. Tsathoggua, with his parents, lingered a long while in Yoggoth, having penetrated your mama. Having penetrated certain central caverns beyond the reach of his uncle. Hizoluquathmanans, a rather reflective and philosophic deity, was long worshipped by the quaint peoples of Kai Kranosh, but grew tired of them even as the Yakshians, and then he had permanently retake from active life the time of his encounter with Ebion, as relayed in The Door to Saturn. No doubt he still resides in the columned cavern and still quenches his thirst at the lake of liquid metal, a confirmed bachelor sans offspring. My account of Tsathogua's advent can readily be reconciled with the references to the mound, Tsathoggua traveling through other dimensions than the familiar three, first entered Earth by means of the lightless inner gulf of Nakai, and he lingered there for cycles during his ultra-terrestrial origin was not suspected. Later, he established himself in the caverns nearer to the surface, and his cult thrived. But after the coming of the ice, he returned to Nakai. Thereafter, much of his legend was forgotten or misunderstood by the dwellers of the red-litten caverns of Yoth and the blue-litten caverns of Knyan, though much mythopoetic variations Lil Hatayin came to tell the Spaniard Zarmar Chroma that the only images of Tsathoggua, and not Tsathoggua himself, had emerged from the inner world. Parchment of Nam. Clark Ashton Smith, and that's Nam, P-N-O-M, not N-A-M as...
Clark Ashton Smith himself was quite skilled at of making these really cool little statues of Tsathoggua. And also, I can't recall if they're woodblock prints or if they're just simple drawings or paintings, but images of Tsathoggua. Really, really kind of cool, fun images of Tsathoggua.
One of my favorite images of all time that I've ever seen of a print is, I believe, by Portland printmaker Liv Rainey Smith, who I've mostly just seen at Cthulhu-based stuff in Portland, but I read an article that she's from Portland, I think. Anyway, she's made a woodblock print of cultists throwing a sacrifice to Tsathoggua, and in my opinion, it is a very, very tremendous print. And the variations that are made off of that original print, awesome, like various colorings and gold leaf added to some. I believe I've talked about it in the past, but it's just a really good print.
One person I know who is an expert, if I'm going to say you can be an expert on Tsathoggua, that would be Reverend Robert M. Price. For the intro to the Tsathoggua cycle, he edited for Chaosium. He included an essay called Batrachian. And if you don't know what the word Batrachian means, it has nothing to do with bats, but everything to do with toad-shaped things. So the fact that Tsathoggua is bat-like and also toad-shaped, quite humorous that this would be entitled Batrachian. Batrachian. Introduction to the Tsathoggua Cycle by Reverend Robert M. Price. Part 1. Saint Toad. Many of us can vividly recall, if someone there in the old folks' home nudges us from our semi-permanent drowsings and inquiries, what an impression Lovecraft's great old ones, initially probably Cthulhu or Yog-Sothoth, made upon us. We never got over it, became lifelong cultists. One can observe precisely the same reaction on HPL's own part when he discovered Clark Ashton Smith's protege Tsathoggua, reading Smith's The Tale of Centampra Zeros in manuscript. He announced to Smith, "As for me, Tsathoggua made such an impression on my fancy that I am using him in the revision, i.e. ghostwriting, job I am now doing, telling of some things connected with the worship before he appeared on the Earth's surface, December 19th, 1929. Smith was, of course, flattered. I was delighted by your additions to the Tsathoggua myth. Too bad you aren't publishing the story under your own name. Sounds fascinating. January 9th, 1930. As it happened, Smith's own Tale of Centampra Zeros would not even see print until November 1931 issue of Weird Tales, while Tsathoggua himself would debut a season earlier in a Lovecraft story, but not the one Smith and Lovecraft referred to in the exchange. They were talking about The Mound, published November 1940. But the first mention of Tsathoggua came from Weird Tales, August 1931, The Whisper in Darkness. Thus the irony of HPL's comment to Robert E. Howard, August 14th, 1930, Clark Ashton Smith is launching another mock mythology revolving around the black furry toad god Tsathoggua, whose name in variant forms almost Atlanteans, Lemurians, and Hyperboreans who worshipped him after he emerged from the inner earth. Whether he came from outer space, with Saturn as a stepping stone. In reality, it was HPL himself who launched the Tsathoggua cycle. He quickly appropriated Tsathoggua, informing August Derleth, May 16, 1931, "I have adopted him into our malignly leering family pantheon." Tsathoggua versus the Tsathoggua. Though ostensibly Lovecraft was borrowing Smith's invented deity, it might be closer to the truth to say that he hijacked him from Lovecraft, such as he had done with Richard F. Searlight's Eldon Shards, went on to develop Tsathoggua in an entirely different direction from what was pursued by Smith. The two connections are the same in name only. Lovecraft recorded his pronunciation of the name in this bit of pseudo-research. It was a terrible cosmic name which the mildewed palmsets of Comorium, conferred by the unmentionable Noctic manuscripts, are more or less liberally rendered as Tsathoggua or Tsathoggua to Clark Ashton Smith, Christmas Day 1930. He can never have learned Smith's pronunciation of the name, but since Smith did not correct him, we must assume Lovecraft got it right. He appreciated Smith's device of varying the gods' names in the different cultures that had worshipped him, calling him Tsathoggua in medieval France and Tsathoggua in Hyperborea. Lovecraft added another version in Winged Death, where we learn that the Africans called the god Tsathoggua, and still another in his fragment of evil sorcerers done in New England by demons in no human shape. The American Indians knew Tsathoggua as Sadgoa, which may imply original pronunciation one sometimes hears from fans. Tsathoggua. I've never heard that pronunciation. By analogy, the other Lovecraftian coinages, a suffix of gua, often implies a contradiction. Lovecraft's Tsathoggua and Smith's differ at practically every point. In appearance, Smith's Tsathoggua is said twice to have a roughly toad-shaped head, but in general to be small, fat, and looks something between a bat and a sloth. Lovecraft's Tsathoggua is never said to be bat-like, but always called toad-like or amorphous, or somehow both at the same time. Lovecraft seemed to have derived Tsathoggwa's essential shapeness from the unstable plasticity of Tsathoggwa's protean spawn in the Testament of Athamas. Though Smith does not describe Tsathoggua himself this way, Smith has these amoebodes appear again in The Tale of Satampra Zeros, while Lovecraft has them appear in subterranean Nakai in The Mound. Smith later calls his deity non-anthropomorphic, but he's hardly non-anthropomorphic, since he seems to have quite a congeniality with his protege Ebion in the Door to Saturn. For Lovecraft, such chats would seem to be out of the question. His Tsathoggua is utterly inhuman. Both writers place Tsathoggua among the Old One's ranks, but here all resemblance, as Lovecraft said in another context, leaves off. Smith and Lovecraft post altogether different relations between Tsathoggua and Cthulhu. Both men actually went as so far to draw up genealogical charts of the Old Ones, but these agree as little as do Matthew and Luke's genealogies on Jesus. According to Smith, Cthulhu is the cousin of Hizalagqua Mazah, the god of Saturn, whom Smith in turn makes the paternal uncle of Tsathoggua. Lovecraft, however, has Cthulhu and Tsathoggua described as cousins, sons of Nug and Yeb respectively, these two evil twin beings, the sons of Yog-Sothoth and Shub-Niggurath. In what order did Cthulhu and Tsathoggua descend to the earth? Smith once quipped how a sculpture he fashioned must represent a divinity who must come down from the ulterior stars and planets with Cthulhu and Tsathoggua to HBL, October 1930. In a spontaneous hymn, the idolater Lovecraft, having received an image of the god from Smith, ascribes the priority to Tsathoggua.
Homage, Lord Tsathoggua, Father of the Night, Glory, Elder One, Firstborn of Outer Entity. Hail, thou who wast ancient beyond memory, ere the stars spawned great Cthulhu. Power, hoary crawler over moons, fungoid places. Ganoth, Yakyaha! Here, Tsathoggua!
Price's introduction to the Tsathoggua cycle by Chaosium continues to talk about Lovecraft and Clark Ashton Smith's relation with Tsathoggua, how he was more of almost like a pet, like a mascot of their mythos, of their deities, a favorite amongst them. I mean, let's see, I can't recall if it was Lynn Carter or Sprague de Camp or who had Conan fight Tsathoggwa's minions. Maybe that was a Marvel comic I read. I can't remember. There seems to be a lot of Tsathoggua out there. And who worships Tsathoggua? We've talked about this in the past. Tsathoggwa's followers, servitors, just like Jehovah has angels, Tsathoggua has these inky black things that can change shape and size and move and stretch. It's like intelligent, dense tar almost that can shape into all kinds of different limbs and it's scary stuff. The story that we keep bringing up, the tale of that guy, talks about them, and they're scary. They're really scary. Who else worshipped Tsathoggua prior to humans? We're skipping a bit ahead here, but I wanted to talk about Tsathoggua a little bit more. The Vormi, who are they? Well, up until I think around the time of Conan, lived a race of humanoids that were ape-like that had orange hair. One could joke that pretty much were the Neanderthals, and it's referenced in either various I don't know if it's like stuff from the late 70s that this stuff's derived from, but I know for a fact that it is referenced in, I think, Horror on the Orient Express and possibly Trail of Tsathoggua, that people with orange hair are descended from the Vormi, but also in this stuff, these things, they talk about how Sasquatches are actually Vormi, but they don't have orange hair anymore. I don't know. Anyway. And where do the Vormi live? Of course, Clark Ashton Smith made a joke. The Vormi live at Vormith Adreth. Wah, wah, wah. I bet if Lovecraft and Smith they would have Tsathoggua follow them around all the time. And it would be great is if somehow, they had to put him away somewhere or had to, have him battle another great old one. Clark Ashton Smith would be like, Tsathoggua, I choose you! Wow! That would be the worst cartoon ever. Or the best.
People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos, PGTTCM, on Twitter and the Facebook. And check us out at pgttcm.podbean.com. That's where everything is found for links, show notes, episodes, store. Check out some other awesome podcasts out there that we like to listen to. Hour with Your Ex, Blurry Photos, Cult Film Club, A Visitor's Guide to Springfield, and if you're going to buy any game that's cards that you play with your friends that have terrible things written on them, gonna have to say, Crabs Adjust Humidity. You heard me, Crabs Adjust Humidity. It is a knockoff of that other game, but I believe they list it as a parody. They're not a paid sponsor, but neither is that other one. So, Crabs Adjust Humanity. Check it out at your local game retailer that sells crappy knockoffs. This is not a crappy knockoff. It's actually got some better cards. And it's got a funnier cover.
And before we get too far, I would like to thank again our brand new sponsor, Pomeranian's Finest Tobacco, who brings us Equus, cigarettes for horses and mules. Made of the finest Pomeranian tobacco. Remember, hay is for horses, so is Equus cigarettes. In August 1965, Satoshi Tajiri was born. To humble parents in Tokyo, the young boy spent his days collecting bugs. So much that, as a child, his friends called him Dr. Bug. As he got older, around the age of 17, Tajiri began writing a zine that he copied and stapled and wrote all by himself, a really cool zine called Game Freak from 1981 to 1986, mostly focusing on the cabinet machines inside of the arcades. And he made this, and Ken Sugimori, who later illustrated the original 51 Pokemon, saw his magazine and got involved, wanted to become part of it. And that's how that started. Sometime around 1990, though, Tajiri first conceived the idea of Pokemon. But it was something called Capsule Monsters, and it was a little bit more RPG-based and a little less strategy-based. Some original drawings float around on the internet involving hotels and stuff like that. But it's, I don't know. It's different. Things got different. Yeah. First, it came out as a video game. Then it came out as a card game. Then it came out as an anime, movies, more games, more movies, more cartoons, different cartoons. Pokemon, it's celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. And it's not really something I got into until about a year or two ago when I started spending time with my nephew and I was recovering from my head injury. Prior to that, I think I made fun of someone for watching Pokemon and then did an obscene Poke-Rap that lasted throughout the rest of the night as I Poke-Rapped at people. Just doing the melody of the Poke-Rap and just making up obscene Pokemon names based off of obscene things. And yes, maybe I'll Poke-Rap later for you. No, I'm not going to Poke-Rap for anyone. But it is fun to make up terrible Pokemon name to the Poke-Rap. Even if you're just doing it with mundane things around you, it makes about as much sense as Pokemon names do, which generally tend to be pun-based in whatever language they're written in. Just a reminder, Pokemon is a game for children. It's a media franchise owned by the Pokemon Company, created by Game Freak and Tajiri, his buddy Ken. And I'm a big fan. I am a big fan. So, this game's been going on for what's now considered, 6 generations? I don't know the differences between the generations. Let's say, the name Pokemon is a romanized Poltermon. Did I say that right? Poltermon. When you combine 2 words together, Poltermon. Of Pocket Monstra Pokemon, or Pocket Monster. There's 721 known, but I don't think those include unknown and missing no. I would not say that I am an expert in Pokemon. I wouldn't even say that I am, slightly advanced when it comes to Pokemon. I like the handheld games. I think Team Rocket is hilarious. And Ash is an idiot. I don't like Ash and XY because it's like, I'm Ash Ketchum, and I know everything. I actually do know everything. I'm a competent Pokemon trainer. And that's not the Ash Ketchum that I know. Actually, I really didn't start watching it till XY came out, but then I started watching the older ones on Netflix, and Ash went from kind of like the neutral mask that was, the main protagonist that anyone can just be. And now he's kind of like, not in creepy, but kind of like almost taken on like the Brock role in the original series of like someone who kind of knows the ropes a bit. Like Ash has won enough battles at this point in time. The guy should be a gym leader somewhere. I don't know. Maybe in Kanto or something. Giovanni's old gym. And I don't want to start talking Joseph Campbell about Pokemon and the differences between Season 1 and Pokemon XY. Wow. Okay. So let's get back into the basics of Pokemon. What is Pokemon? So you have, 10-year-old kids, adults, bug catchers, bike gang people, all kinds of folks out there catching monsters using these things called Pokeballs. And what a Pokeball does is when you have injured or put into some sort of done something to weaken your Pokemon that you're battling that is wild, doesn't belong to anyone else, you can throw a Pokeball at it. And if you have enough room, you have 6 slots, and if you have enough room in your inventory, you can keep it and you can battle with it. Otherwise, it is teleported to Bill's computer. And I think you meet Bill in a few of the games. Everyone starts with Pokemon that is a starter Pokemon, and this starts to go more into the game mechanics now. Generally, your starter Pokemon is going to be a grass type, fire type, or water type. I'm a big Bulbasaur fan, so I'm big on grass and I also really trying to remember the name of the Mudkip. Mudkip, the water type. Yeah, Mudkip's awesome. I can never remember starters besides those two generations that those two came from. The one with the fire pig and the gecko, and can't even remember the other one. Yeah, don't remember that. Oh, and I do like. I believe I went with a fire type when I played XY. I don't know. I normally go with water and grass type, so I thought I'd play a fire type, and it worked out well. So let's get into this concept of, I don't know, elements in Pokemon. Well, you have fire, which hurts grass type which hurts water type, and water type which hurts fire type. And people are like, well, how can water hurt plants? It's like, have you ever overwatered a plant till like the leaves start turning kind of a yellowy color and then curl up on you? Yeah. Water can't hurt plants. It's called drowning stuff. Wait a minute. Grass? No, fire gets grass. Grass hurts water. I guess it's like grass absorbs all the water. Is that right? Is that how it works? I'm terrible at this. I'm not a good Pokemon trainer. I just smash everything at each other. I just get Garchomp to destroy everything. Just power level my starter and just murder everything. I mean, faint everything. I've never tried the Nuzlocke challenge. That's not true. I totally haven't. I died. It just didn't work. After Dutch, my Bulbasaur died, I was like, nope, not doing this anymore. So you have that basic types we were talking about with the fire, water, and grass. But there's not just 3 types in Pokemon. There's normal, fighting, flying, poison, ground, rock, bug, ghost, steel, fire, water, grass, electric, psychic, ice, dragon, dark, and fairy. Like, fighting type is twice as effective against normal and not effective at all on a ghost, while a psychic type is twice as effective against fighting and poison, but only takes half damage from steel and no damage from dragon. It's a little bit more complicated than rock, paper, scissors, but you can go online and look stuff up and find out stuff that fairy types don't take damage from dragons, but dragons take double damage from fairy types. That's effective. What other kinds of... Oh, and you've got potions. If your Pokemon faints, you've got sprays you can spray on them. In other RPGs, it would generally be like health potions and stuff like that. But you carry around spray bottles and spray your Pokemon. Yeah. Yeah. I don't really know much about the trading card game, but I know that it goes with the basic mechanics that are involved with the video game, the RPG. Something else the RPG has is something called the Pokédex. The Pokédex is used in the video games and the anime and kind of almost some... hard to describe it with... there's elements like the Pokédex or the Dex in the RPG games, depending on how old the game is or how new it is. It might have something like it or something resembling like a cell phone kind of thing that you can use to contact people, listen to the radio, whatnot. But in the cartoon and in the manga, it is something given to the protagonist to identify Pokemon. And really not much else to talk about with Pokemon. I was thinking, what could I talk about with Pokemon that are Lovecraftian? And they're monsters. Pokemon across the board are pretty damn Lovecraftian to begin with. But most of them are based off of yokai, the spirits that inhabit all of our houses, if you're from Japan. Animals from the Chinese zodiac, references to movies. Pokemon all across the board. And I'm saying Pokemon. I hope people aren't too upset with that pronunciation. I could say Pokemon, but I know people would probably poop their pants if I said that. But yeah, anime. There's an anime of it. It's hilarious, or at least the first few seasons are hilarious, in my opinion. Ash Ketchum is an idiot who says dumb, stupid puns, and Team Rocket does hilarious dances, dresses up, does little skits, and has little mottos. It's a lot of fun. Jesse and James and Meowth are hilarious, and probably my favorite thing about the anime. Meowth's a cat. We have to point out the fact that Meowth's a cat. Cats are awesome. H.P. Lovecraft loved cats. H.P. Lovecraft probably wouldn't have liked Meowth, though. As I said, I wasn't really into Pokemon when it first came out. I was, I think, 21, 22, let's say. So 20 years ago, I would have just turned 20 when Pokemon came out, and I was too busy working and doing stuff like that. I wasn't really... I never had a Game Boy growing up, or even as a young adult. I didn't get my first handheld until a couple years ago, my 2DS, so I could play Pokemon Soul Silver and Pokemon XY on the same thing without having to change devices. I even still have my Pokewalker, which I occasionally use as my pedometer, because the fact that I'll get cool stuff if I walk a whole bunch. And yeah, I saw the episode of Pokemon with the Pokemon with subtitles, the island with the giant Pokemon on it. That was the first Pokemon I saw. And after that, I didn't see it for about 20 years. 15, 20 years, and that was the first episode I saw. It's like, I've seen this show twice, and this is the okay. Yeah, it's fun. I initially became interested in Pokemon because of the fact I love the game Earthbound. I love Earthbound. And I couldn't find Mother 3, the English translation, or any of the things that I could play, and I really wanted to try it. I wanted to try playing Earthbound on a handheld device, but I played it on an emulator, and then someone said, oh, have you played Pokemon? And I'm like, that is the dumbest thing. No, if you like Earthbound, if you like certain aspects of Earthbound, like a modern RPG where you travel around and I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And there are elements of it where, it's, you got psychic type Pokemon and not psychic children. You got fighting type Pokemon and not fighting type children. I don't know what the Pokemon equivalent of Jeff would be, because you don't have inventor type Pokemon. Anyway, I really did like playing Earthbound, and I really liked playing Pokemon. I couldn't find a copy of it, and I downloaded a copy of Pokemon Yellow and played the heck out of that. And then I played Pokemon Fire Red, and then I finally tracked down a copy of Pokemon Soul Silver on, newegg.com for a good price. And yeah, that's around the time I got my 2DS and played the heck out of both of those. I still haven't made my way through Alpha Sapphire or Alpha Ruby or Omega Ruby. I've got Omega Ruby. I don't have Alpha Sapphire. I have Omega Ruby. Still got to finish that.
I also need to finish Dragon Warrior 9, and every single game in the Silent Hill franchise that I've played for 10 minutes and then got freaked out.
Yep. There's so many cultural influences. Really too much to talk about here. One that pops into my head right away is in an episode of The Simpsons, they all get seizures because of a Japanese cartoon. That's a reference to Pokemon before people knew what Pokemon was in America. They just know that there was a cartoon that gave 600 kids seizures. It's the one with Porygon. Yeah. Anyway. And Pokemon. If you want to check out more about Pokemon, I highly recommend going to Bulbapedia. Also, YouTube. You want to find out more about Pokemon? Do not go to DeviantArt. You will see so many boobs on Pokemon. If that's your thing, if you want to see Pokemon with boobs, fine. That's great. You like podcasts? Why are you listening to this? No. If you like podcasts, check out The Dex. It is a Pokemon podcast that it's fairly clean. I mean, it's a lot cleaner than this, with Alex, Pokekells, and Jimmy. It's a good one. They also do the National Dex on the YouTubes, which I haven't really checked out because I think they focus mostly on the card game. But the Dex is awesome for finding out when GameStop's going to have a card that you have to go in and pretend like it's for your nephew, and everyone knows it's for you. Yay! And let's see. Just gonna say Jaywitz on YouTube is also a good source for cool, fun Pokemon and Nintendo stuff. So I would highly recommend that. Something else I want to recommend is Pocket Mortys. It is a iOS, Android game. I don't know if it's on the Android. But I do know that it is a Pokemon parody involving Rick Sanchez and Morty Smith. And they go to parallel worlds and fight themselves. And you have Mortys from all kinds of different parallel worlds, which you can evolve, and you can even fuse some of them together to make new Mortys. And I guess there's like 71 different types of Mortys, something like that. And you can get them either through fighting, battling, finding them, or just go online and buy a capsule, which you get a bunch of free stuff and guaranteed to get a Morty. I watched something on YouTube where a British guy bought $40 worth of Mortys and got to see a wide variety of Mortys, and quite a few of them are parodies specifically of very specific Pokemon. And Pocket Morty uses a very, very complicated game mechanic that is actually rock, paper, scissors. Some Mortys are paper, some Mortys are scissors, and there are some rock Mortys out there. A podcast that I've been listening to, just finished up, kind of binged listened to it and then binge listened to it again, is Limetown. Limetown is a fictional investigative journalism story. It has kind of a very kind of like serial feel to it, but it also has a spookiness to it, but without the surreal goofiness of, say, Welcome to Night Vale. Like, there's not the surreal goofiness, but there is kind of that dark foreboding, something dark's happening here. The tagline is,
10 years ago, over 300 men, women, and children disappeared from a small town in Tennessee, never to be heard from again. In this 7-part podcast, American Public Radio host Leah Haddock asked the question once more: what happened to the people of Limetown?
so yeah, give Limetown a listen. Maybe if enough people listen to it, they'll definitely do a season 2. Or make some other stuff. It's good. I highly recommend it. And if you're thinking to yourself about this episode, hey, you only covered a little bit of Tsathoggua. You only covered like the first portion of his life. Well, I skipped ahead a little bit, honestly. We haven't even gotten to the age of, I don't know, the Hyperborean age. We haven't gotten there yet, but skipped ahead, showed you a little bit. Maybe when we get there, we'll talk more about Tsathoggua. Maybe when we get into later stories that also talk about Tsathoggua, we'll get into that kind of stuff. But right now, the Earth is just barely supporting life. Yidra, Tsathoggua, Atlatnacha, Ubo Sato, all those dudes, just chilling on the barely functioning Earth. The metal's cooled, so, Tsathoggua doesn't have anything to sip on. But here's the thing. For Tsathoggua and Yidra, there's animals, worshippers, life forms to take on. Things are looking good for the great old ones. It's not like they're gonna get trapped there or anything, And, it's not like you're gonna have to deal with some sort of challenge from beyond.
Which, we'll be talking about Challenge from Beyond next time. What'll be the rambly part? Or less researched, or who knows? I may not research Challenge from Beyond and just ramble about that. I don't know, this episode kind of good. Kind of researched everything. And yesterday when I recorded everything and then forgot to record it, I don't know. Gave me a chance to rethink things and come up with an outline instead of just doing everything off the top of my head. And that's, I guess, what I learned, what I took away from this episode, really. Plan ahead. I would like to thank Kevin K. from Dearborn, Michigan for making a joke that I thought was really funny on Facebook, I think it was. He said if Tsathoggua was a Pokemon, he would be a Snorlax. And I agree. Thanks, Kevin K. And thank you, everyone, for listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos, brought to you by Equus Cigarettes. Cigarettes for horses. I love that music. The Pink's Quieter by Grapefruit. The music at the beginning of the show is Rotella Fella by that jackass DB Spitzer. This has been People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos, Episode 10, Tsathoggua and Pokemon. I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was.
Again, thank you for listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. I've been your host, DB Spitzer. Check us out on the iTunes. Check us out on the Stitcher. Check us out on... Download Jabbercast, the app, and check us out on there. I think you'll find that Jabbercast is super easy to use and really easy to organize your stuff, and you can also make it look like the same color as your cell phone case, which I love. Check out Hour with Your Ex. Check out Blurry Photos. Check out HP Podcraft. Check out... I don't know. There's all kinds of good stuff to check out there. Thank you again for listening. Check out our Etsy store. Check out our Society 6 page. Both of those have links on store on the podcast if you go to pgttcm.podbean.com. Thank you so much again. 5-star us wherever. Give us 5 stars at the Michelin Guide. Do you know what the best thing about this podcast is?